Welcome, Annee De Mamiel.
Hello, Dee. How are you?
Really well. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for being with me today for this episode of the Change Sessions. So, Annie, you grew up in rural Australia.
hmm
In your late teens, early 20s, you became one of Australia's top 3 women triathletes, and you started your career in the pharmaceutical industry. Take me to that point. Why pharmaceuticals?
Um, because it was there. In all honesty, it's really interesting in that I was studying chiropractic. I was doing my bachelor in anatomy and physiology, and that bit was done. And it's the opportunity came up, and I went and had an interview. I'm not even quite sure why I went for the interview. I think it was a bit of a challenge. It was like, oh, this sounds interesting. It was the allure of it came with a car, it came with travel, it came with earning some real money.
Yeah, all the
And
benefits,
I
right?
know, I know. And honestly, it was I went for the interview, and the fellow who interviewed me turned out to be my best boss, the best boss I have ever had. But the funny thing was, we turned up and he had a black eye, and I walked into the interview and I just laughed at him. And did you expect me to be serious with your black eye? He'd gotten playing football or something. And he taught me so much. And Abbas was just the most incredible mentor.
Mm-mm.
I think I just learnt about just being in a team, how important that was, how it was just it all the importance of just doing your best all of the time and giving it all that you have. Even it was a role that what didn't suit me necessarily, but it was just fun and I loved it. Um, the pivot into finance came many years later, where I sort of left Eli Lilly and um, went on to travel. And then when I was traveling, as the rite of passage for all Australians, I just felt I needed something more exciting when I got back, and so I went for a job at Ord Minnett, and I got it. But it was once again, it was something that I'd never studied. I hadn't studied economics, I hadn't studied maths, but it was interesting and I was fascinated in it. And I think that's sort of a big telltale for me is um, I do things at 100% or no percent. And once I'm involved, I just dive right in and just learn as much as I can. And it just excites me.
And how was that time in finance? It's clearly a very different world, although there are parallels to the pharmaceutical industry in more ways than one, shall we say. Um, Take me back to the highlights of that time
um,
and the
it
lows,
was,
because there are probably a
yeah.
few of those.
Exactly. But it was very dynamic and once again so team orientated, and it was still open outcry on the floor. So it really was like adrenaline and excitement and fun. And the highs were high and the lows were low. Um, but things like, you still had restrictions as to what you could wear, and how you could
Incredible, right?
dress and things like that, which, it is what it was, and but it was really an amazing time. And I sort of, I literally talked my way into an interview, and I just got on with my lovely boss who interviewed me, and he gave me a chance. He liked the way that I sort of just, I guess, grasped life and went for it, and that's not possible nowadays. So I felt very lucky to be a part of that time.
What did you learn about yourself during that time when you were on the floor screaming with
Um,
everyone else?
yeah, I learned how to run up a very big expense bill, but also I think I learned about very much about the social aspect and bringing and how to form really solid relationships, and that relationships develop in very different ways, and they can take you down many different directions. So, and there are different types of sort of business relationships. And I think, that was really instrumental in sort of the rest of my life, because it was so fast. I didn't know anything, and you were sort of thrown in the deep end, and it literally is like being fed to the sharks, where you sink or swim. And my goodness, I just swam as fast as I could.
It's extraordinary, these experiences that test your adaptive potential, right? Where you've literally
Yeah.
got no choice. And
Mhm.
Annie, some while down the road, you experienced loss of friends and so forth. And I believe your boss or someone you were close to passed away one year, and you were going through change again. Take me to that point, because you were at another, I guess, fork in the road where you decided to pivot again.
Yeah, very suddenly, Bruce passed away. It was Christmas Eve, and he had a young family. He died of a heart
Oh
attack,
dear.
um, and it was really shocking. It rocked me to my absolute core, um, and there was sort of we dabbled in so much at that time, and I really feel that was sort of a wake up call for me to just go, is this what you really want? Is this where you want to be? I think, like I said before, I'm somebody who is all or nothing. And if I hadn't didn't leave that world, I'm not quite sure where I would have ended up.
Right.
Um, because new experiences, new situations, that drive of force of adrenaline is so addictive, and I think it's can become very unhealthy. I think times are very different now, but back then it was all just well, it wasn't all just party, but it was very much around that. So Bruce taught me many things, but I think that was his biggest lesson to me.
You clearly can still almost feel that feeling, I sense, of how dramatic and terrible that moment was. How quickly after that did you decide to make a change?
Quite quickly. When I do big things like that, it's now or never, very much. And I sort of decided, I think for me, my fascination, even as a child, like growing up, was very much about the human body and physiology, and I just like it excites me in a different way. It sounds a bit bonkers, but I just love, like, the human body is such a miracle. It's so amazing, and so at that point, I decided to go back to finish my chiropractic degree. Um,
Was that a risk for you to just leave, the world of finance? Were you earning lots of money? You had a wild but very structured life in some respects.
it was a massive risk, because you're going from hero to zero almost.
How did that feel when you actually, walked to the other side of the road metaphorically, and you were no longer in that world with all the benefits and the perks and the excitement and the adrenaline, and you were starting on a new road, which you were financing yourself, obviously.
Yeah, it was just like, what the hell have I done? And you have that moment of like, my goodness. But that passes very quickly, because you have to just get on with it. And I think once again, that's very much me, of like, okay, this is the task. Let's just get on with it and do it, and just I guess cover yourself with what it is that needs to
And
be
just
done.
be pragmatic in approach. So, Annie, sometime later, you were diagnosed with brain cancer. Where were you at that time, and what went through your mind at that moment?
So the my primary was cervical at sort of at that moment, and that was in July '97. Um, so I was studying at the university, and it's shocking. It's literally it's like, oh, okay. Um, but also it's just you're given a whole lot of stuff about, this is what we're going to do, um, and for me it's like, hold on, no, that doesn't sit with me. I This isn't right.
What didn't feel
um,
right at the time?
so just the plan of approach. in that it was, talking about it had, progressed very quickly. And we were talking about, hysterectomies and all sorts of things. And, I was a 26, 27-year old sort of female that hadn't even explored any of those elements yet. Um, and so, I went through several different doctors, going, no, 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 until I found a very, very special doctor, Dr. Hill, who looked after me. But also in this time, I had, my goal was to sail around the world.
Right.
And I'd always thought I would love to learn how to sail. And then this race came into, so in the March of that year, this race came into Sydney Harbour. And I wandered down to the boats and started chatting to one of the girls who sort of was on the boat. And I was like, oh, another idea seemed to start bubbling up. And it was like, oh, I think I could do this. This would be really cool. And and so I literally went and found out how to do the next race, which was 4 years away. And so I went off, then learnt to sail, and that became such a driving force behind everything that informed the next sort of probably, gosh, the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years of my life.
Tell me about, because you were dealing with your treatment. There was a further diagnosis down the road. You were preparing for this race. Was that the driver that kept you going during those times that were trying as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I said to Dr. Hill was very much like, I want to be on that boat, when it leaves Southampton in, 2000, September 2000, I'm going to be on that boat. So our goals with my doctor and what we were planned to do had to get me on that boat, to the point of, I remember going through chemotherapy, and being so sick. And I had a picture of a boat in the Southern Ocean above the toilet. And my mantra there was like, I'm
Yeah, of
practicing for the
course.
Southern Ocean. Um, so it was the thing that everything get coming back to that was like, will that get me on the boat? Will that get me forward? Will that, get me to the start line? So it became very much about that.
And when you were later diagnosed with another cancer and with some shocking life expectancy. How did you handle that? Because one time round was a lot. You were dealing with treatment which was making you ill. How did you cope with that?
So once again, I think my way of looking at this stuff is don't believe what you're first told. Like find out the facts, investigate. Um, because at that point I'd gotten on the boat, we'd started the race, we had come into Argentina, to Buenos Aires, and so um, that was when the liver diagnosis sort of had come up. But I'd gone back to London because once again my goal was to sail into Sydney Harbour. There was no way I was going to fly into Sydney Harbour. Um, and so I went back, had more treatment, and literally just found myself in this place of you just have to get on with it. You just have to get on with it. Um, I read, had some great sort of help and mentors through that process where I came
Right.
back from, I flew from London to Wellington into New Zealand and saw my teammates come in, and, prepared myself for getting on the boat to sail into Sydney Harbour, and sort of which was my big homecoming. And then when we then sailed from Sydney to Cape Town, in which there, my lung ones came up on the scan. I was only allowed to join the race under certain criteria, and at that point the doctor said, that's when I had you have 6 months to live, and you know I won't tell you exactly what I said. It was like along the lines of, what the hell do you know, and who the hell are you to tell me I have 6 months to live? So, it became very much a you can't tell me that. And literally 2 weeks ago, we
Oh my
celebrated my
God,
20 years on
Annie.
party, which was
That's
20 years since
incredible, incredible,
on. I know.
incredible with
Yeah,
everything that you have
yeah.
been through. Gosh, I'm
So
so proud and so happy.
oh, do you know, it's like I said, now it's just one of those things. It doesn't define me. It's a part of who I am, but it's not the sole purpose. And I think, you have things that we all have issues and we all have obstacles and massive challenges in our lives. And no one's is bigger than anybody else's. They're just different. So you approach them, you deal with them, you move on. Or I do. That's
And when
that's
you
just what I
when you were
do.
told that, obviously the fighting spirit came out, but practically, what did you decide to do? Because I guess, at some points in your life, you've decided to change certain aspects to survive, right? Um, what did you do at that point?
I just researched. I found somewhere that I could go and really look after myself and every alternative measure possible. But firstly, I got back on that boat and I sailed into Southampton. Um, and and I think we were probably back for about a week, and then I went to a clinic in Mexico. And there's now a number of these sorts of clinics, but this was so innovative in that it combined the mental aspect, the physical aspect, as well as the medical aspect. So, we were us having like all sorts of injections and like medicines as well. Um, and we all sorts of what we'd call hippy dippy stuff. But to me, there was process in it, and I really believe that every bit was playing a small part. So I think I was there for about 4 weeks, and just over time, we really it's I implemented those into my life, and I just now constantly research, constantly look at um, uh, new clinical trials. Trying to really think about what is properly out there and investigate any of that, and it worked for me. I was really ready and open to having to do everything and like unpeel all of the emotional layers that, there's some really strong evidence that like we need to understand and to do so much on our emotional aspect and well-being to properly get well. Um, and it's hard, it's
How did
difficult,
you go
but
about that? Obviously, it was a different point in time. Today, people are more open, aren't they, to a range of therapies, medical, clinical, holistic, and other. People are more open to talking about how they feel. When we started our careers, you just got on with it and you didn't complain, and you didn't show weakness or emotion. How did you go about that emotional kind of exploration at that time when you were getting yourself better?
I guess I didn't have a choice, because if I didn't do that, then the alternative was not to be here. Um, and I guess that was the thing. I had a deep understanding of that, and listened and just really said dove in, because I'm not somebody who would tend to tell the world how I was doing, and because that wasn't my way. Said you grew up in a small country town and you just got on with things, and it's so it was like, okay, I read so much. I really just began to look at all different sorts of philosophies around it, from quantum physics to the fully emotional thing, and just really looking at every aspect and understanding how the body works and what we could do at a cellular level, what we could do at that emotional level, and then at a physical level as well, because I was always somebody who exercised and moved, and that was the thing that I really sort of didn't want to stop doing, and but bringing that all into a different way that I did things. I honestly believe that all of the training that I'd previously done in Ironman and
I
those sorts of
bet.
things had given me the mental strength to do what I had to do. Um, and I kept falling back onto that, because if you can push yourself through those physical pain barriers, and to keep on going and to keep on moving, then you could do anything, or you can train your mind to do anything. And I really believe that you can.
No, it's so interesting. And Annie, you subsequently, you believe in lifelong learning. So you went back to study. You have a degree in Chinese medicine. You're trained aromatherapist. You're highly skilled in many domains that are related to this area. And you started creating products and treating clients. And you set up De Mamiel. So another leap, shall we say, in 2010. Tell me about that point. How was setting up the business in your name and taking this new road?
I think, I actually think that's probably one of the most terrifying. Yeah, it is not terrifying. That's too harsh a word, but certainly one of the most challenging things, because there's so much emotional attachment to some of this.
Yeah.
Because it's you. It's my name out there, and I have a sense that when people, when I treat them, when I see them, they become part of. It's my responsibility to look after them. Like it's, I really sort of take them in. Not flock sounds a bit of an airy fairy term, but I really feel that I'm there to help them, and that's my purpose, and that's what really really fulfills me. But the whole thing of creating products, doing products, and making them, I had to. For me, it was about giving people tools to ease the stress in their life, because when it sort of all boiled down to it, like stress becomes and is the core of so much imbalance in our bodies. And so before people got to that point, here at I really felt like I had the gift of being able to help people with tools, with doing that. And so the business really started by accident, in that I would sort of treat people, would sort of see what they needed, and I'd go home and make things, come and use them. And then if you were lucky at the end of the day, most people sort of said, "Oh, can I have some to take home?" I'd literally just give them the pot and come home and make more. And then Chris, my husband, just said, "You can't keep doing that. That's not very good business."
Not very commercial.
Yeah, exactly. And still, it's really funny, looking where I've come from. I'm not very good at commerciality, but to me, it was just like, oh, okay. And so we literally put a label on, sort of put together a website, and it sort of, the rest is almost not history, but it sort of happened. And so much of the business has been about word of mouth and about things happening almost by accident. It was like, oh gosh, 3 weeks after we'd done they put the website up, the products were called in by Net-a-Porter, for a meeting, and we were like, oh, okay. And then we had to go to a meeting, and I remember sort of walking down sort of at the meeting with a little bag full of bits and pieces, and it was like, oh yeah, we love them. We want to do them next month, and we're like, oh my god, like we can't do that. We don't have boxes. We don't have all of these
Oh, I
things.
know. It's just the best, isn't it? These moments are really the best because you have no choice but to get stuck in. And of course, you were taken up by Net-a-Porter very, very rapidly within a matter of weeks, basically. You are now stocked across the globe. You've won multiple awards. What have you learned about yourself in this process of building the business?
The thing is, isn't it? It's like you never stop learning. Every day is a new lesson. And I really think that it comes down to how much I believe in just hard work, but never ever losing sight of what it is that you truly believe in. And going back to that purpose of this is about creating, tools for people to help people, and that's always been the closest thing to my heart. It's really about making sure that we deliver the most amazing quality product, and it's so easy to become distracted. It's so easy because exciting things pop up along the way. It's like, oh, could you do this? Could you do that? And it's like, oh my God, these people want me. Like, and you get on that sort of treadmill, but then it doesn't take you to your end goal. And so it's like, okay, that's not my purpose. That's really lovely, but it's not my purpose. This is what I really want it to be. We've had sort of several conversations with people about different things, and but to me, just that delivering a product that really really works and makes such an incredible difference. Otherwise there's no point in producing just another smelly oil or just another cleansing balm. This is about having to work on on an emotional level, on a physical level, on the skin, and on a very cellular level. So it takes a proper holistic view and a holistic way of working, which I think is quite unique.
Tell me, Annee, to that point, clearly the interconnection of those three elements is pivotal and fundamental to your work and to what you create. Where do you think the greatest imbalance lies? Because, we are made of matter and spirit, I believe, at least. And if we're not giving attention to one, other things will be out of sync and out of balance. Today, where do you think the greatest imbalances are? Do you think it's stress across the board? Is it cellular? Is it emotional?
I don't think that we can actually pick one, because it's like it's whatever impacts something has a knock on effect. The body is this kinematic chain, and I think it's something that we forget, especially in the Western world where we look at things in isolation. And quite often, our bad back is may not be coming from the back; it's coming from the hips and the knees or the ankle, for example. And but it's looking at what's created that, because it's sort of like this moving thing of imbalance. And as scientific research goes on and on, like 10 years ago, talking about the fact that our gut impacted our mind and our emotions was probably laughed at in some circles. But we now know that the gut, there's so much goes on in the microbiome in terms of the hormones that it makes. And it's important in the creation of like making serotonin, which is our happy drug and makes us feel better. So all of those things have an impact on that, and the stress is a big knocker of all of those things. But it's sort of, and that's I guess what I do. My sort of deal is that I really dig deep to understand what is the root cause of all of this, and that's what we address. And so from that is the pivotal point of creating something that gets back to balance.
So how do you translate that into your own life? Because you have, you're an entrepreneur, you treat clients all over the world, you travel, you are in your laboratory on your organic farm creating as well. How does that, what is your secret, if there were one, to to live a life that represents your values and translates itself into a healthy living as such, a healthy way of living?
Yeah, it's really difficult.
I want to know the secret.
And, um, I always talk about it, and you know this very well. It's about going back to the breath. Um, it's very much about creating space in your diary and making that happen. So allocating time for you and just really understanding, because we always think everything else is more important. Other people are more important. It's the children, the relationship, all of those things are important. But if you are not in a place of health and balance and feeling good, then that will have a knock-on effect in everyone around you. And so it's creating time and space in for you. And whether that's which is what we sort of talk about quite regularly in clinic, is that whole thing of routine to ritual, ritual to results, where
Which I love.
yeah, thank you. It's really about Okay, we need to clean, like, how can we multitask that's in a really beneficial way? So, we clean our skin, we have moisturize and all of these wonderful things, face massage. But by adding like the inhalation and the smell to that, and by layering, so we're impacting all of those elements, the emotional, the physical, and the cellular, we're doing that. We are switching from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system through inhalations and through the brain. And it's about cutting that time, and that will then help with cortisol and stress as we begin to slow everything down.
Right.
Those little things can make such a difference.
It's so interesting. And I think we are in a world where we are very distracted. People are distracted. They're on their laptop, but they're looking at their phone and they're looking at something else, and they've got notifications popping up and there's noise and they're called. It's endless. And you, a few moments ago, said that, in business terms, you are very focused on the purpose of what you're doing and what you're looking to produce. And that has meant that you often say no, even if there are interesting opportunities and collaborations and so forth that come down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that?
I have some amazing mentors, and I've had some incredible mentors in the business that we keep going back and we can sort of talk things through with, and having that support around you, because it's so different now, and that you're on so much of the time, but really just having stops. So really trying to go at 9:30. This is my phone. This is phone dead. Stop. Like this is my bath time. This is that sounds like sort of going back to school, but having scheduling things like that, I think, is so important, because it comes up like a meeting, and so your mind goes, oh, it's now time to to eat. And like food and nutrition and feeding ourselves in the right way is so important. Exercise and just constantly checking in with your purpose. I think step back and then look at the whole picture. I think I very much look at that in terms of clinic and everything that we do. It's like, in terms of health, it's like, what's the whole picture? What's everything that's going on here, rather than everything in isolation.
100%, because it's a continuum, isn't it? It's an ecosystem. And I think part of the issue is people don't quite know what road they're on. It's very flattering if you're in the business world and you get called on the next big opportunity, but it in some ways chooses you rather than the other way around, to your point. And I think this is a thing that people struggle with. And you've been through an awful lot of change in your life. Some of it you've just jumped, well, all of it you've dealt with and you've jumped into it, sometimes by choice, sometimes because you had no choice. How do you handle change today? And how do you feel about change?
I think if we don't change, we stay still, and then they catch you. That's and stagnation. And I mean, stillness is a great thing, but stagnation is not. Um, and I think one of the great analogies we learned in Chinese medicine was, it's like a compost heap, isn't it? And if you don't move and change, and if you put your hand inside a compost heap, you get lots of heat, and then it just goes off. And I think that, oh, it goes smelly. But so I think you need to change, because it also opens up new opportunities and it takes you forward. And sometimes, though, it's enough to look forward. You don't have to be moving forward, but facing in that right direction is almost like your intention is there. And so that really helps. And it's great to reflect and go backwards. I mean, like to reflect on where you've come from. But, change is something that we welcome, although sometimes not quite so rapidly. But
So, Annee, listen, we are going to wrap up shortly. If you look back on your life, and if you were talking to your 20-year-old self, what would you say to that beautiful young woman?
oh dear, it's like, believe in yourself and you can do it. Like, it will happen. I think just be the best that you can at what you're doing. And one of the funny things that I would say is wear sunscreen.
Oh God, I know, right? At all times, even in front of your laptop. because of those rays. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute honour.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Double Espresso with Dee, with me, Dee Sterling. If you enjoyed it, I'd love you to review and subscribe to the podcast so we can share these amazing stories with others. I'd also love to connect with you, so feel free to contact me via Instagram DM at D Double Espresso. Until the next time, au revoir.